Springfield's Talk 1041. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Tuesday. My name is Nick Reed. Streaming live, KSGF.com. We are also in the world of YouTube. If you'd like to watch the show there, you can easily do so. Just look up Springfield's Talk 1041. Archive shows there as well. Of course, we've got podcast, iTunes, Spotify, and KSGF.com. Karina Jean-Pierre is touring around. She's got a book, and I mean, some of these folks are very difficult to figure out. What is her angle? Now, number one, her hair is straight. I actually think her hair looked better before.
I think so too.
I really do. And I never thought it looked, and I'm not saying that like, oh, it was bad before, but I thought it looked, perfectly fine. Maybe just because we were used to seeing it. Now this straightened hair just doesn't look healthy. I don't like her hair so much anymore. But she is. So it was widely expected, and when she was on CBS, this was noted. It was believed that she was going to have a book that, kind of gave further insight into the cover-up of Biden's cognitive decline and what it was like trying to maneuver around that, particularly as the spokesperson for the White House and for the president. And her job isn't to tell the truth. Her job, of course, is to tell the world whatever it is that the official messaging from the President of the United States is. That's her job. And so what was it like navigating that while behind the scenes dealing with Biden, the clear problems? Was she also shielded from Joe Biden like all of these other people were, including people within his own cabinet, which we would learn subsequent to, just the election of Trump is largely when these people started coming out and telling the truth. She's doing none of that. She is still out there claiming that he was perfectly sharp and he was the smartest guy in the. She's still. And what is perplexing people is why. Why is she doing this? It is a. Maybe she is. I mean, can an adult human being be that truly delusional? I shouldn't have to ask myself this question. I can't believe I'm wondering. My mind tells me that we see this level of delusion from people on the left constantly. It's always there. But this is just, it's like everyone knows it. Everyone admits it now. I don't know, other than apparently Karine Jean-Pierre, and I'm sure Jill Biden, I mean, if she were to be asked about it, but I'm not really sure there are any relatively significant politicos out there that are still trying to cling to this absurd notion that Joe Biden was perfectly fine, that there were no signs of cognitive decline, but Karine Jean-Pierre is. Now, at times, one may take this particular stance because in a similar position because they believe that the person they're displaying loyalty to, it might pay off, that this person is going to have a resurgence, that this person is not, they may be down, but they're not out. And while everyone else is abandoning this person, I'm going to gamble here against the odds, and I'm going to hitch my wagon by way of loyalty to this individual, hoping that it'll pay off big time because they're going to have a big comeback. That clearly is not in the cards. Joe Biden is not going to have any sort of comeback, nor is anyone in his direct order. I mean, unless she thinks Hunter Biden is, going to somehow rise from the ashes and he is going to be the future leader of the Democrat Party. And when he was out there doing these interviews just months ago, there was some speculation that perhaps that's what he was thinking about doing, running for office. I mean, that family there, you think about that family, and they have never known anything other than extracting money out of people because of selling access and influence. I mean, you think about that. Hunter Biden in particular, those kids, their entire lives, that's all they've known. Because Joe Biden has been doing that longer than many of us have been alive. And the only reason that they got any job, maybe they convinced themselves otherwise. I don't know. They may be as shocked as anyone else. Hunter Biden might be just as shocked, or he may be shocked that people aren't buying his paintings and that he's not getting these jobs on these boards that pay 6 figures a month. And maybe he truly, genuinely thought that these things were occurring because he was naturally talented and people really wanted access to his brilliant mind, and it had nothing to do with the fact that people were actually just buying his access to his own father. But they have nothing. And so the brief moment of speculation was that this Hunter Biden, I mean, why not? What else is he going to do? And so Karine Jean-Pierre, is that what she's doing? Is she thinking that Hunter, does she have some sort of inside information here? And she's going to take the long odds on that? Now, I say long odds because it really, the odds of any of that being based in reality is extremely far-fetched. But this is what one is left grappling with when Karine Jean-Pierre is out there making such absurd claims. You try and figure out, what are they thinking? What is she thinking? We'll play some audio. One of the entertaining aspects of this is no one's buying it. These folks, her allies in the media, that during the campaign were still towing this line of BS that Joe Biden was perfectly fine, and it was just some right-wing conspiracy talking point that he had cognitive decline. All of those people that were part of the cover-up in the media, they're not in that game anymore. That game is over. It's done. It's over with. In fact, they don't want to talk about it any longer, which is something a lot of Democrats say. Why can't we move past this? Why is it Republicans keep wanting to bring it up? Really, when it comes back up, it's generally because of something like this, one of your own on the Democrat side of the aisle out there bringing it up again. And Karine Jean-Pierre couldn't be a worse enemy for the Democrats in terms of trying to claw back any perceived reputation they may have had, or at least they believed that they had. And for her to just be out there with this book tour and hitting these morning shows, reminding the American people what complete liars the Democrat Party had been for years while Joe Biden was president of the United States, because that's ultimately what's happening here. Is people, when they see Karine Jean-Pierre, ultimately it's a reminder that the Democrat Party, as deep and as wide as possible, filled with people who lied straight up about who is running the country, which is a question that still has yet to be answered. Traffic in a moment. Right now, latest news update.
And the first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair of the Ozarks Home Improvements. Today we'll see sunny skies with a high near 66. Tonight clear with a low around 40. For your Wednesday, sunny with a high near 71. And taking a look at Thursday, sunny skies with a high near 70.
Now that story that Mike Landis had there is just an example of how I think that I just view stories differently than I guess most people, and the story there and the hostage situation and licking and how the hostage taker, a prisoner, let the guard go, and the guard is treated for whatever and so forth. And so, of course, my thought is, why did he let him go? I mean,
It's a good question.
yeah, did he just get tired and give up? He's like, okay, this isn't getting me what I wanted, or did he get what he wanted? Did
And what did he want?
Well, yeah, what did he want? What was he? It's just like, why? So I'm not the only one that wonders these things. You
No,
wonder, okay? It's just amazing how often, increasingly, I hear news stories, and like that story left out all of the things that would actually make it a story, or to me anyhow. Sometimes that information isn't available, but if that's the case, I want to know that. I want to know there's no, the prison is not releasing the information regarding what the demands of the prisoner were and if any of those demands were met. And so then I'm like, okay, well, at least I know why we don't have the information. But I don't know. This is why I suppose I would never crack it in the world of journalism. Latest traffic report. Green Jean Pierre got this book, Independent, A Look Inside a Broken White House, Outside the Party Lines. So above the rest of us, the belief was this was be an inside expose, her unique position, access, and how was the cover-up being played? How was it the communication was occurring? What was it, sort of this unspoken understanding that we all have to cover for him, or was there someone that was deliberately instructing those that were part of the small group of people that had access to the president. Exactly, this is what we're going to say, and so forth. And so the title, "A Look Inside a Broken White House," it lent itself to reinforce the idea that that's what the book was going to be about. Not to mention, well, obviously that's what the book's going to be about, because nobody is still claiming that Joe Biden is fine. Well, apparently Karine Jean-Pierre is. Unfortunately for her, no one's really buying it, and I don't know what she expected. Here she is yesterday on CBS. This was during the morning show on this particular aspect of the book.
The apparent decline of Joe Biden. You said you're a member of the inner circle and you never saw the decline. And after that, I wrote, how? Yeah. You even write, Karine, that you were on the plane with him going to the debate and you didn't see anything.
Well, when we were on the Air Force One going to the debate, you got to remember his campaign people were on the team, his family was on the team. I actually was one of those rare trips that I didn't really see him until after the debate, even though I was on the plane. So really, I want everybody to know that I take this question incredibly seriously. I do. I was his White House press secretary, which means I had a role that saw him practically every day and traveled with him.
And you saw nothing.
For more than 95%. We've always said, we're not going to say, oh, he didn't age. He aged. And he poked fun at it. We always owned up. And with age comes what happens when you get older. But when we talk about the mental acuity, and again, I take this very, very seriously. I never saw anyone who wasn't there. I saw someone who was always engaged. I saw someone who understood policy, pushed us on the policy, and also understood history. And there were times, I'll tell you the story, there were times where he would call me into the Oval Office, and I would be like, oh no, because I knew whatever he was going to ask me was going to be direct, was going to be about a story he read, about how we're pushing back, how we're pushing a message forward.
You're right about
It's unbelievable. It's weird because in a certain way, some of what she says I think is probably accurate, but then her second half of the scenario doesn't make sense. So, for example, when she says, if I got called into the Oval Office, I would think, oh no. Well, that would be a normal response, because oh no, did he poop his pants? Is he incoherent? Is he going to remember who I am? Are we going to be repeating the same conversation over and over again? But that's not why she claims that she would say, oh no, and she would get called to the Oval Office. It's because he was just so sharp. He was going to just really require her to be top notch and at her best. And I mean, it's just ludicrous. The other aspect of this entire conversation that has occurred, it keeps coming because of Democrats. Incidentally, this isn't something that continues to be a portion of the conversation because Republicans won't let it go. It's because people like Karine Jean-Pierre insist on making absurd comments like this and taking absurd positions. But it's easy to forget when you listen to these interviews that Joe Biden's cognitive decline was on full display for everyone to see. We all knew it, other than people who chose to be in complete denial and people who perhaps isolated themselves to watching mainstream media, the propaganda wing of the Democrat Party, that those outlets clearly did not show footage of Joe Biden during those periods of time, or if it was something that was carried live, like a press conference, and so it was, it was broadcast over their airwaves, they would not broadcast it again. And then you watch MSNBC and CNN, and all they would do is anytime it came up was claim that it was ageism or Joe Biden just has a stutter and Republicans are being mean to him. And so that segment of the population, and this would be the Democrat base, you can understand how it is that they were gaslit into believing Joe Biden was perfectly fine. But normal people, normal, average, everyday people saw it. You wouldn't know that, however, if you woke up from a coma and you listen to these interviews, because even these CBS, Gail King was the one that was like, Karine, come on. You know, you got to be kidding us here. How did you not see it? And, Karine Jean-Pierre, or Gail King, is putting it in the context of, I mean, you were on the plane with them before that debate. And she's like, yeah, but you got to understand there were a lot of people. You didn't have to have inside access to Joe Biden to see that he was cognitively declined. See, that's sort of the premise that they set up, and some of that is absolution for the media. Like, well, see, we couldn't have known because we didn't have this inside access. But Karine, I mean, you had inside access. You were on planes with them, and you claimed you saw him every day. You did not have to have that access to know something was wrong with him. We all knew something was wrong with him. Before he was in the White House, on the quote campaign trail, we were all of us talking about how he was being kept in the basement because he had clear issues. It was, Sarah, I don't know if you remember or not, but that was the election when he would do, like, for example, he had the Zoom, like, it was like a public Q&A, and somebody asked him a question, and then he answered, and he started wandering around the set.
I remember that.
Because he forgot that he thought he was talking to somebody on his phone or something. He forgot he was doing a Zoom call that was streaming to the public at large, where people got to submit questions. Those were the sort of things that were occurring when he was running against Trump. It wasn't as profound as it would become in the subsequent years, where he had to have foreign leaders take turns, take shifts, as they fully acknowledged in a Wall Street Journal piece, that they took shifts. Who would take care of him when there would be these public events? I mean, what an embarrassment, for Pete's sakes. You think about that. But so it wasn't to that level. But it was clear to the naked eye. And that is one aspect of all of these conversations, the latest with Karine Jean-Pierre, that it can easily be forgotten because of the way these questions are asked. And they are presented in this narrative of, well, you should have known because you had special access to him, suggesting that that's the only way one would have known. No. Normal people who have eyes and a brain and are interested in the truth instead of denying it knew something was wrong with him for a very, very, very long time. More audio of Karine Jean-Pierre, a couple of other different formats as well, in which it's the same level of delusion, and it's just somewhat entertaining to hear these people that once upon a time were part of the cover-up pushing back on Karine Jean-Pierre. If you want a great home loan, I want a great homeloan.com, the place to go. The site itself actually has a great deal of valuable information, including the 10 Commandments regarding in the context of home loans. There are a number of things that may be obvious that you don't want to do when you get that pre-approval letter that indicates, hey, here's what you're good for when it comes to a home loan. You don't go then and take out a car loan, buy a new car, make any massive purchases. But there are some things that you might think actually would benefit you, like putting some unexpected cash in your checking account that you got as a birthday gift, or maybe you had a relative pass away and leave you something unexpected. Well, that not only doesn't help you, but that can be a red flag that, because of government regulations, will hinder things and put a roadblock in place. And so the best way to make the process go as smoothly as possible is to make sure that those roadblocks never occur in the first place. Now, if they do, of course, the characters are masters at guiding through that, but it's part of the reason for that 10 Commandments. And of course, they have other directions of advice as well to just help prevent those things from popping up in the first place. I want a great homeloan.com for all of your home loan needs, refinancing and reverse mortgage as well. I want a great homeloan.com.
Springfield's Talk 1041, the first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by J&S Automotive. Today we'll see sunny skies with a high near 66. Tonight clear with a low around 40. For your Wednesday, sunny with a high near 71. And on Thursday, sunny with a high near 70.
Talking earlier about the news story that my client has had regarding the licking hostage taking, the prison in licking. I want to be specific so you just say the licking hostage situation, that could.
It's like, what's going on there?
Like,
Do you have an update
interesting.
for us?
Well, no, we had a number of people weigh in. So if you missed it, there was a story, and there was a hostage situation reported in Licking, and then the bulk of the story was the fact that it ended. The hostage was released, the inmate was arrested, and that was pretty much the end of the story. And so, my inquisitive mind was like, well, why was he held hostage? Were there demands? Were the demands met? Why, if not, why did there's just, it's like, to me, the whole meat of the sandwich was not there. Someone had texted in, at the end of the story, the inmate was arrested. Was he not already in custody? Yeah, I guess, technically, I suppose you're arresting someone, but they are already in prison. It seems chicken and egg, I guess. News stories used to be based on the 5 W's: who, what, when, where, and why. Apparently not anymore.
That's what I
yeah,
said.
You were talking about that as well. Okay, I haven't read the rest of the text messages. So given that we are talking about a prison story and some of you with your sense of humor, I am not going to read these without first screening them. Let's go back to, and by the way, that's a compliment to you, not an insult. Corinne Jean-Pierre, she has a book tour going on. She's got this book, Independent, A Look Inside a Broken White House Outside the Party Lines. It was largely expected to give a little bit of insight as to, like the broken White House. Well, here they're doing everything they can to cover for the senile president of the United States and her having daily access and being the voice of the White House, what that was like. Instead, she is seemingly surprising even left-wing media by coming out and instead claiming, no, he's still perfectly, or that she never saw any decline. In fact, she saw the exact opposite. So it is, I don't know, almost like she was given a challenge. Someone said, you've lost all credibility. And she says, oh, you think so? I'll show you loss of credibility. Here she is being asked about her declaration that she became an independent.
Independent. You've left the party. I'll admit, as an independent myself, I did read a few, of these passages and go, it really feels like you're setting this up as Democrats versus Republicans. Would you ever vote Republican?
No, I would not vote Republican.
So then are you an independent?
Well, no, here's the thing. What I'm trying to highlight is the system is indeed broken. We need a two-party system that's functioning, that's actually functioning in order for our democracy to work. And what's happening right now, it is not working. You have millions of people like ourselves who are independent who cannot participate in that two-party system. And so if that's happening, there's something broken. People are not seeing themselves in either of the party. So we have to lean in. I feel like I have to lean in and say, okay, let's highlight this and figure out how do we fix this? What do we do?
What do we do? Her argument here, which incidentally is not an argument that is absent. A lot of people feel this same way, that the system is broken. The two-party system is broken. She, however, she's asked straight up, so then would you ever vote Republican? She's like, no, I wouldn't. Now, which of the two parties, if we're talking about the need for a two-party system in the name of democracy, so her perception here is that the two-party system is broken. There's only one real functioning party. That's inferred from her declaration. She would only vote Democrat. Will only vote Democrat. This is the party that has not straight up legitimately allowed its own people to actually choose its nominee since before Obama. I mean, John Kerry, I guess, would have been the last nominee that the Democrats actually chose without the party putting its thumb or its boot on the scale. You ask any Hillary Clinton supporter, and they will tell you that the system was rigged to give it to Obama. Those are Hillary Clinton people. Those are inside Democrats. It was supposed to be hers, but they got all excited by this Barack Obama guy and the You know how much they love the little labels of things, making history based off of superficial attributes, and they saw an opportunity to do that, and it was ripped away from her. Well, then when it came her time to get the nomination, all of the Bernie Sanders people, including the Bernie Bros, will tell you that that was completely rigged against him so that the party got its choice, and that was Hillary Clinton. Then, of course, Joe Biden, that one they allowed the Democrat voters to vote for, but then would say, never mind, we changed our mind. This is the person you're going to support now. And Karine Jean-Pierre is complaining about a broken system, but of the two political parties, there's only one that she apparently sees as functioning. It's the Democrat Party, the party that's we just talk about the primary system, not to mention the fact that they spent millions of dollars to kick RFK Jr. off ballots wherever they could, millions of dollars to keep Cornel West off ballots, millions of dollars to keep Jill Stein off ballots. They had a whole horde of attorneys that would go from one state to the next, trying to prevent the American people from having the choices that they felt might diminish the likelihood that Joe Biden would get that nomination. And then, of course, obviously Donald Trump, until the Supreme Court stepped in and told Democrats, yeah, you can't just keep trying to kick political opposition off the ballot. Doesn't work that way. Not to mention a political party that had control of the White House for 4 years, in which we don't know who was actually president of the United States. We don't even know who was making these decisions. This is the farce nature of Karine Jean-Pierre laying out the argument that the reason that we have a broken system and a two-party system that isn't functioning is because the Republican Party is the one that is problematic in terms of the system playing out fairly. Oh, okay. Very astute. More audio coming up. I'm Nick Reed. Karine Jean-Pierre, continuing on. I've got some audio with the bulwark, the This is, I think it's a podcast, but we've been playing audio from CBS Mornings where Karine Jean-Pierre is promoting her new book. And part of what she also talked about is the lack of humanity within the Republican Party.
If you're really an independent, though, how can you rule out a whole party? I mean, presumably, I don't know where you live. There might be a candidate who's Republican who you happen to like him more than the Democrat.
Right. Look, right now, where the Republican Party is in this moment, I care about the vulnerable communities out there. Project 2025 is something that they're touting and they're actually ticking off. That's scary to me. That is really, really scary. I represent many of the communities that are under attack. And even if I didn't, there has to be humanity and care for people. And I'm not seeing that. Now, if they were to change and turn that around, maybe.
Okay.
But I think there is a fundamental problem. And I'm talking about there's a problem on the Democratic side. There's no fight. I think they need to be an opposition party. And I see clearly some flaws in the Republican side that scare me. That scare me.
No humanity in the Republican Party. Now, the Republican Party is a party that, and I hesitate to, let's not look official party platform, but just talking about the culture. The culture amongst supporters, voters. And on full display, I don't know that there was a greater demonstration than that Charlie Kirk Memorial. A time in which, arguably, you would see the worst of the Republican Party culture, right? You had an individual that was beloved by many within the conservative movement. An individual that wasn't just beloved, but was making meaningful strides towards educating young people, the significance and importance of that. There was a belief that Charlie Kirk and his movement of free speech and engaging young people with different perspectives was one that could very well have been responsible for the uptick in young people voting for Donald Trump. He was seen as someone who wasn't just getting finished up with these massive changes, but just getting started. So you would think that a gathering of 70, 80, 100, however many thousands of people that were conservatives, that because of the assassination of that individual, you would have seen the worst. That would have been a moment in which you could almost even understand. People get upset, they're angry, they're mad, they do and say things they shouldn't. But what did you see instead? A call to forgive. A call to love. Specifically, one's enemies. A call to figure out how it is as ferociously as one may be targeted, to work past it, to hold one's head high, and to work with love and compassion as opposed to hatred. That's what that was. And then you look at just this No King's Day. Calls for assassinating Trump. I mean, any given day. There's just some university, it was a professor's assistant, overturned a Turning Point USA table on campus. You had a child at a Wisconsin event given by a Democrat booth an Assassinate Trump bracelet. You've got the attorney general candidate for the Democrat Party in Virginia that has fantasized about murdering political opposition, watching his children die, and saying that more police officers need to be murdered in order to cut back on law enforcement or on shootings. And the Democrat Party is fully embracing the guy. I mean, just go down the list. A Democrat soon-to-be mayor of New York who says he supports global jihad. And the Republican Party is the party that lacks humanity, she says. I mean, again, I don't know that there's any part of that person that has even a slight glimpse of reality. Final bit of audio coming up. It's a different forum. And in it, just a preview, the host is suggesting that Biden wasn't as good at giving the press access as Donald Trump is, where Donald Trump at any given moment will do a 3-hour press conference off the cuff, as opposed to Joe Biden, that, of course, had note cards and rarely was press given access to him. Her response to that, and I'm sure given the theme, you will not be surprised. Pinnaker Honda underway. Lots of great rebates on new Hondas this month. Money off new Accords, $2,000 rebate. New CRVs, $1,000 rebate. New Civics, $1,500 rebate. And new Pilots, $1,000 rebate plus low monthly payment. So on those new vehicles, a lot of tremendous rebate deals. And then there's the Honda True Certified Dream Deal sales event rates as low as 0.99% on select 2020, 2021, 2022, and 2023 models. And the Pinnaker Advantage, 20% off routine maintenance when you purchase your Honda at Pinnaker Honda South Campbell, just south of Walnut Lawn. Karine Jean-Pierre peddling her book, making a number of stops yesterday, one of which was the podcast The Bulwark, which is hosted by a former Republican strategist, Tim Miller, who became a never-Trumper, and the issue of who gives more access and has a better form of communicating with the press when you put Biden up against Trump.
If you're really an independent, though, how can you rule out a whole party? I mean,
scratch that, wrong audio. Hold on just a sec. Here we go.
My job was to speak to what the decision he made in the sense of continuing, trying to lift up the policies and the legislative wins that we did have. We did have legislative wins.
Sure,
and
but he
that
didn't
is
talk about him that well, though. He couldn't talk about them. He wasn't campaigning
no,
that
no. Wait,
vigorously.
first of all, he did talk about them. Whether it broke through or not, he did. Tim, he did talk about.
I mean, he talked way less to the press than Donald Trump does. Way less. And he wasn't out there at all. He wasn't good off the cuff. He wasn't doing press conferences. Let's just be real. Like, he didn't do the night events.
It's not true. Tim, you're conflating all of it. That's what you're doing.
Not.
No, you're telling me he didn't talk well about it. Then you're telling me he didn't talk at all. No, maybe you weren't paying attention to what we were doing at the White House. But
I'm paying attention. I'm with you.
The president spoke to the American people a couple times a week. He traveled and did domestic travel and talked directly to the American people.
All right, so there's... I don't even know what you would ask someone like her. I mean, I guess some of these questions, we're playing the questions. but it's just such an odd thing. It's so weird. It would be different if this were prior to the election, and so you get it, and she still has everyone else on the left and in the media covering up for Joe Biden, but it's like it's over. The game is over. I used this analogy the other day. It's like you hear those stories of Japanese soldiers that would run up, they ran up into the mountains, and 3 decades later, I don't know if these stories are true or not, but I remember hearing some, like they'd find some 30, 40 years after World War II Japanese soldier that, just didn't know whether the war was over and had isolated himself up into the mountains. But it's like that, but she comes down and insists that, no, the war's not over and we're winning. Like, who are you talking to here? Who is your audience? No one. I just try to put myself in her mindset. And if you have maybe even 20% of people who believe you, let's say somebody writes a book about, I don't know, the world being flat. Most people don't believe that. But there's a portion of the population that does. Very small, I suspect. But I also suspect it's larger than people who believe that Joe Biden was perfectly cognitively fine. I can at least understand if you write a book about the world being flat and you're out there passionately talking about it and selling it. One, you're providing information to people that you think might change their minds, but also, at least there's some, like 1 out of 1,000 people who agree with you. Who is Karine Jean-Pierre talking to? I don't know. All I know is that Democrats cannot be pleased that she's out there just churning all of this stuff up again. News in 60 seconds. I'm Nick Reed.
I'm Rich Thomason. Say could have been a mass shooting at the busy Atlanta airport, thwarted. And it's all because a concerned family saw something and said something.
We have taken in custody and have under arrest a Billy Cagle, age 49.
Atlanta Police Chief Darren Shearbaum.
Cartersville Police Department was alerted by the family of Mr. Cagle that he was streaming on social media, that he was headed to the airport, in their words, to shoot it up.
Cagle arrived at Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport in a Chevrolet pickup truck parked outside the terminal doors and appeared to show interest in TSA security before he was questioned and taken into custody.
When we went to that vehicle, we found inside a Springfield AR-15 assault rifle.
I'm Jennifer King.
Joining the Trump team's mission to shore up the fragile Gaza ceasefire deal, Vice President Vance. He's in Israel now. He joins presidential envoy Steve Witkoff and presidential son-in-law Jared Kushner. Israel, meanwhile, awaits the return of the bodies of 15 more of the hostages now that the body of another captive has been handed over. The Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals says President Trump does have constitutional authority to deploy Oregon National Guard troops to Portland. A 3-2 ruling, the 2 Trump-appointed judges siding with the administration, while the lone Clinton-appointed judge dissented. The matchup for baseball's Fall Classic is all set.
The Toronto Blue Jays are back in the World Series for the first time since 1993. They host the Los Angeles Dodgers in Friday night's opener after a 7-game series victory over Seattle in the American League Championship Series. The Dodgers are aiming to become the first repeat winners since the Yankees from 1998 to 2000.
Correspondent Gethin Coolbaugh says Game 1 is Friday night, 8 o'clock Eastern. Watching Wall Street, the Dow futures are up 17 points. More on these stories at townhall.com.
Dennis Prager here for AmFed Coin and Bullion. I've always been a strong believer in precious metals investment, and I've always been fascinated with rare coin collecting. But owning the wrong coins that only make dealers a lot of money can be catastrophic for your investment portfolio. AmFed Coin and Bullion specializes in taking people out of non-performing coin portfolios and turning them into gold, silver, or platinum bullion. They tailor a portfolio based on your goals and not what they want to sell you. You'll never experience scare tactics, misleading hype, or high-pressure sales from owner Nick Grovich and his very knowledgeable staff. They will evaluate your portfolio, show you how your coins have performed, and take the time to educate you on the ugly industry practices so that you can make an informed decision. Smart people can make very bad investments when they're under pressure and lack the facts. Call 800-221-7694. That's 800-221-7694. AmericanFederal.com.
Amazon says a massive outage of its
Springfield's Talk 1041. Hey, Hunter Hardscapes and Outdoor, Krista, said the following. We had all of our landscaping completely replaced several months ago. Daniel Hunter is very knowledgeable, considerate, kept us informed throughout the process. The plan he drew up greatly improved the appearance of our home. We're still receiving compliments from our neighbors about how good it looks. His crew's friendly, always on time, worked hard. Hunter Lawn and Landscaping is one of the most professionally run businesses we have ever used, and we highly recommend their business. Hunter Hardscapes and Outdoor, we have been using Hunter for over 20 years, said Keith, the absolute best. There's other reviews that you can read as well on their site, which is hunterhardscapes.com. See some of the work that they do. There's a nice little before and after with the slider deal. You know where I'm talking about, where you can slide back and forth to see the before and after. And there is a cost calculator estimator as well. So you can get somewhat of a ballpark idea. Most places that do landscaping, hardscaping, they don't provide that because it can be sometimes a hassle. Some will enter in, and they get a ballpark idea, and then they will contact the hardscape landscaper, and then they come out and they give them a real specific, okay, this is actually what it's going to cost. And now, when I looked online, it said it was going to be $1,000 less than that. And so at times it can be somewhat of a hassle. But Daniel Hunter believes it's a valuable tool just to give you an idea of what it is that you're looking at. And so that's something that is also on the site. HunterHardscapes.com, also under Nick's endorsements at KSGF.com. The budget talk situation, you've got the shutdown in which increasingly people are growing tired of the Democrats holding it up, keeping the government shut down. This is something that is not moving in their favor. And in fact, I believe it was Harry Enton on CNN had polling numbers showing that although it's just a slight uptick, Trump's approval rating has actually gone up a bit during this entire shutdown. It's just not something that Republicans are suffering because of, and in fact, Democrats are to some degree. Then you have the other Obamacare subsidy situation. And this is an area that I have long been concerned because this is as if Obamacare wasn't throwing money down a rat hole to a large enough degree. COVID gave Democrats an excuse to throw even more money down it because it is a horrifically broken system. And instead of making things better, we talked about this to some extent yesterday, instead of making things better and them costing less, it is costing a lot more and things have gotten worse in true government fashion. And so in true government fashion, the answer is, well, we should do more of that. The COVID era money down a rat hole approach that the Democrats took was temporary. They made it temporary. They did that, not Republicans. And they made it temporary because they said that's all that was needed. As usual, they were lying. Now, it isn't needed. I mean, unless, again, you see it as a need to expand and spend more on a broken system. But their claim that they weren't going to demand more, that was all that was needed in their perspective of things, and it was a lie. And they're doing now what it is that they always do with this stuff. And when their plan expires, as they set it to, they claim that Republicans are cutting things, that they're slashing health care. These people are perhaps incapable of telling the truth. This, however, as impressive as Republicans have been versus the old Republican approach of constantly buckling because they don't want to look bad, and Trump has come along and actually brought with him, it isn't so much that he's changed a lot of establishment Republicans, but as Trump came into the spotlight and onto the political scene, his first term and then the 4 years subsequent to that in this term, there have been a lot of new people get involved that have they have spines. But I've been very concerned that there are enough of the weak-kneed, pathetic Republicans that don't actually stand on principle that would want to buckle to the Democrats' demand that we continue the COVID level of throwing money down a rat hole in the name of Obamacare. And apparently Mike Johnson is one of those individuals. As disappointing as that is, it is not surprising. Chad Pergam has a piece, Reporter's Notebook, government shutdown stalls as Democrats demand Obamacare subsidy extension. And Mike Johnson, in the piece, says the following regarding Obamacare, quote, there's no way to repeal, because you've got repeal and replace Republicans, and we've got to repeal it, and then we'll come up with something better, because apparently there no longer is a political party that says government not being involved is the answer. The Republican answer is, oh, government should be involved, but we just know a better way for government to be involved, and that is repeal and replaced with some new form of government-run health care. Apparently, Mike Johnson doesn't want even that. Quote, there's no way to repeal and replace it because it's too deeply ingrained right now. We have to improve it. Now, I think his verbiage here is very telling. What he says is that Republicans need to improve Obamacare. What he doesn't say is Republicans need to create conditions that improve health care. These are two very, very different things. Obamacare is this government control over our healthcare system, which has made it demonstrably worse in every single matrix. That is a separate thing from healthcare. Healthcare in this country is the care that one receives from one's doctor, from the hospital, be it an emergency room visit or a regular checkup, whatever it might be. And I think it's very telling that Mike Johnson's perspective on this isn't about health care and arguing that we have to improve health care, but instead he talks about Obamacare and how that's something that we have to improve, because these are two very different things. I don't know what improving Obamacare even means. I don't understand what that looks like, because it clearly doesn't correlate to an improved healthcare system. These are two completely different things. Now, I'm sure that he would argue that's just semantics. I meant healthcare. You can't mean both at the same time. You cannot mean or say or promote improving Obamacare while wanting an improvement of healthcare at the same time. That's like, wanting to, well, I'm not going to toil too much over an analogy, but I think I'm making the point here. And this is, unfortunately, the devastating mindset and perspective of the leadership of the Republican Party, that these two things are one and the same. That if you want to improve the overall quality of health care you receive as an American, that means that we have to improve the, government's involvement in it. Government isn't the solution. Government is the problem. That entire mechanism's involvement in the system is what makes it broken. Just because you are handing someone else the tool of chaos that is Obamacare doesn't mean that it's magically going to start working. And there's just this real conflict of sorts going on within the Republican Party right now. And it is, I'll use myself as an example. You see Trump do things that people say could never be done. even amongst people who are supporters of him. Oftentimes, peace in the Middle East being one of them. Just these things that you think, well, yes, it's noble, and that's Trump. He swings for the fences, but let's be realistic here. But he manages to do it. He thinks outside the box. He doesn't take the Eeyore position. Well, it's just too entrenched. He's bold. And that gets people who traditionally vote Republican excited and inspired. But then you have this other sort of black hole of inspiration in the people like Mike Johnson that are like, just so you know, everyone, go ahead and give up. It's just too entrenched. There's nothing we can do about it. So I guess we'll just try to improve the thing that is screwing up healthcare, and that's Obamacare. If you can't beat them, join them. That's what Mike Johnson is saying. If you can't beat them, join them. Meanwhile, I suspect Mike Johnson, because of his position of power, does not and probably will never suffer the repercussions of Obamacare like the average person does. Now, he will, I believe, in some degree, because the entire the quality level overall continues to lower little by little. But the extreme scenarios that you and I experience, 10 years ago, you need a new doctor, you're in to see one 3 days later, and now it's 8 months later, 9 months later. I suspect that Mike Johnson probably and his family don't suffer those same repercussions. So this is, incidentally, this is the divide between Trump's success when it comes to the ballot box versus Republicans when they're by themselves. And there seems to be this confusion as to why, when Trump's on the ballot, Republicans do fantastic, but that just doesn't seem to translate when he's not on the ballot. Well, it's because of this crap. If the coattails aren't there, the R next to the name, that is not a coattail. And when you're messaging, particularly when it comes to, this is so crazy because we've gone through shaking our heads, and how do Democrats not understand that when it comes to the border and crime and inflation during the Biden years, how impacting those things are on people's everyday lives, yet they just pretend as if everything's fine, let's keep doing more of the same. Yet when it comes to medicine, when it comes to our everyday people in this country are feeling that just like they feel or felt the grocery inflation and crime and so forth. And here Mike Johnson's answer is, well, people are just so used to it at this point. We're just going to kind of throw in, give up, and, just add to the problem. How inspiring. I don't know about you, but it sure makes me want to get out there and make sure the Republican Party stay in charge so we can see their version of government-run health care. Latest news update.
And the first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair of the Ozarks Home Improvements. Today we'll see sunny skies with a high near 66. Tonight clear with a low around 40. For your Wednesday, sunny with a high near 71. And taking a look at Thursday, sunny skies with a high near 70.
Streaming live, KSGF.com. Gaza ceasefire under tension as U.S. envoy arrives in the region. J.D. Vance making his way to the Middle East. Steve Witkoff, son-in-law Jared Kushner also. And they're wanting to keep the momentum, if you will, going. This is... On one hand, this isn't the ideal path, but it is what I've argued is the largely expected and anticipated and purposeful path that Donald Trump expected. This peace deal had two potential desired outcomes. One, that Hamas would be like, okay, we're tired of everyone hating us and fighting and killing and raping and throwing gays off of rooftops and all that sort of stuff. And you know what? We're at the retirement age anyhow. So, yes, we'll give up our power and we'll just go about our days and just sit on the beach and we'll be fine. Now, it'd be great. It'd be fantastic. Shocking. Suspicious, be lots of different things. The other pathway, the one that I believe Trump recognized as the one that in all likelihood would play out, and so far we are seeing play out, is a plan that in and of itself, if Hamas decides to try and play their usual game of sort of cat and mouse with success and compliance, non-compliance, would be different than Hamas doing that in the past, because they would not simply be playing that game and screwing around and betraying a deal with Israel, but with lots and lots of other Middle Eastern countries. And the people of Gaza, perhaps most importantly. Because of the way this was crafted, it required Hamas to no longer have any position of influence for the people of Gaza. Officially. Like, you're going to have a government body, can't be Hamas, they can't be involved. Well, because Hamas is Hamas and they're human beings and Trump recognizes human beings, I'm sure he recognized that even if they agree to this, which they did, they are going to do everything they can, obviously, in their minds. Well, we're still going to be, running things. We're still going to be running the show. We may not officially, as members of Hamas, have positions of authority, but we will have positions of authority. We either will, but we'll give ourselves other names, or we will essentially control those who are in positions of power. We'll be the puppet masters. They are taking steps to try and ensure that that is the case. Because right now, their main battle is now within Gaza and making sure that the people of Gaza know that they are going to be in charge. And how do they do that? How does Hamas operate? Well, it's never like a feel-good campaign. It's always murder people. So that is what they have been doing since last weekend to people in Gaza. They have been having these public executions. And they're making it known. These are individuals that we suspect are collaborators with Israel. What is the significance of that? It is to try and create a culture and an environment that is hostile to this entire agreement because it involves Israel. And it might just be on the surface. So here's how it works. It's sort of like the witch trials. Back whenever people were afraid of being accused of being a witch, because if you're accused of being a witch, you're going to get burned at the stake. So what do? You start making sure everyone knows how much you hate witches. And in fact, you start pointing to other witches, like, oh, I think they're a witch over there, because after all, you wouldn't do that if you were a witch. And so you get very proactive in making sure everyone knows how much you hate witches. Well, Hamas starts executing people in the name of, boy, you look like you're pretty in line with this plan to make sure we're not in power any longer. You seem to be, you must be collaborators with the Jews. So we're going to execute you. Well, what's the intended result? The intended result is to make sure that the population certainly doesn't, overtly promote this peace deal, but actively comes out against it, becomes hostile towards it. And oh no, yeah, we're good with Hamas being in charge. Yep, that's who we want in charge. That's for sure. It's terrorism. This is how terrorism works. They use the threat of death and torture to get people to behave the way that they want. And now it's turned on the people of Gaza, because that is their and this is the beauty, if you will, of what Trump has crafted here. He has taken a force of evil that had spread out throughout that region and had influence even in other countries in the Middle East, and now it is relegated to just Gaza and slaughtering, or not at this point slaughtering in terms of volume, but executing its own people in order to try and maintain this little tiny bit of power that they still see as something that they can cling on to. The path right now, the two different pathways that are very quickly going, to come into focus here, is one in which either they are successful in doing this and they do just change the shift in culture, because they observed the people of Gaza very happy about this, chanting Trump's name, very excited about the idea all this was going to end, and happy about the path forward with it. So we're at this precarious point here in which Hamas, and this is clearly what they're wanting to do, is to just shift that mindset to go back to the way that it was. What Trump clearly is banking on, and this is, I'm sure, part of the reason that you've got J.D. Vance and others that are being dispatched to that region of the world, is to make sure that doesn't happen, is to make sure that it becomes very clear in the environment that none of these countries are happy with what Hamas is doing. Everyone is against them. And to give the people of Gaza this sense that the world is behind you, not Hamas, that we are on your side, that this is something that is going to be moving forward. Part of, I've got to take a break here, but there's another important component to this, and it involves Hamas deliberately trying to draw the Israelis back into as big of a full-scale war as possible, and so there's a lot of judgment calls that are going to have to be made here, combined with intelligence, which apparently the intelligence that the Trump administration has been getting from the CIA regarding what's going on with Hamas has been way off the mark thus far. So there are questions as to whether or not that intelligence is valuable, whether that is intelligence that is just poorly gathered, or if this is a deliberate attempt by the CIA to derail any success by the Trump administration in the Middle East.
Springfield's Talk 1041, the first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by J&S Automotive. Today we'll see sunny skies with a high near 66. Tonight clear with a low around 40. For your Wednesday, sunny with a high near 71. And taking a look at Thursday, sunny with a high near 70. And the Pyramid Roofing Company, with the severe storms that rolled through the listening area over the weekend, there's quite a few door knockers out there trying to take advantage of the situation, and so many of them don't have you and your home's best interest in mind. Oftentimes, they always tell you that you need a new roof, and then they make you sign what's called a contingency agreement. And when you sign that agreement, it's incredibly difficult to get out of. Don't fall victim to that. If you have storm damage, or you even think that you have storm damage, make sure that you reach out to Josh and the Pyramid Roofing Company. Now, the Pyramid team, they offer emergency tarping services, free roof inspections, and they work with you through that insurance process without making you sign anything. And they will be upfront with you, whether you need a whole new roof or maybe just a simple roof repair. So once again, if you have storm damage to your roof, or maybe you're not sure and you just want peace of mind, schedule that free roof inspection with the Pyramid Roofing Company. You can find all of their contact information under the Sarah's Endorsements tab at ksgf.com.
Most people recognized that the peace deal with Hamas and so much of the Middle East was not necessarily something that was going to be easy. And I think for a lot of people, the fact that the live hostages getting released, that was just a huge victory in and of itself. The hang up right now in terms of steps regarding hostages is the bodies of those that were killed or died in captivity. And Hamas is saying that they're having that there are some of the bodies that are in areas that require certain equipment. So I'm guessing they're buried or something. And I'm not surprised, frankly, that Hamas, it would not surprise me if they're telling the truth, that they don't know where all of the bodies are. I don't know that Hamas necessarily functions as cohesively as a lot of people think, in terms of, just having a hierarchy and chain of command. You are talking about emotionally driven individuals here. These are terrorists, and so oftentimes they will go rogue, or they're just allowed to. They're just told, you take those people and go to this region and so forth. And so it just, I don't think it's surprising that there isn't some sort of official listing of where all of these bodies are. Then you have the fact that Hamas, and they're openly acknowledging this, that they are executing people that are citizens of Gaza. On one of their channels, an official Hamas channel, they have said that the executions were part of a security campaign targeting collaborators, mercenaries, thieves, bandits, and those cooperating with the Zionist entity that is Israel throughout the Gaza Strip. So this is, again, trying to cling to power, make the people of Gaza too fearful to be supportive of the part of the peace plan that requires them to not be part of the developing government, or the government that will be developed. I think Hamas has fully recognized that in name they can't be part of it. They can't have official Hamas members, but they're wanting to be kingmakers, or not be, they're Hamas, but they don't claim to be Hamas. The people of Gaza will know this, however, and so that's why it is that they are carrying out this terror campaign against those people, so that they will be terrorized into submitting. Some of the additional difficulties here are the fact that, again, you don't necessarily have a real tight chain of command with Hamas. So you can very well have some Hamas, whatever leadership is left, saying, listen, the plan forward needs to be one in which we lay low, we do what we can in order to continue to cling to power behind the scenes, while there may be other members of Hamas that say, no, we need to continue to fight, and we are going to continue to fight. And so they will deliberately go out and try and disrupt this ceasefire, because they don't want it to occur. I think that we sometimes may fail to recognize, again, that Hamas isn't necessarily this real cohesive chain of command situation, given that they're terrorists. And so there may be infighting there as to whether or not and just how to move forward in terms of maintaining power while complying with this peace deal. You could also have, as part of Hamas's approach to keeping the people of Gaza compliant with them, is to refocus the Gazan people's perspective on who the bad guy is. This peace plan was put in place in a way to make the people of Gaza see Hamas as the bad guy. So if you're Hamas, it would be beneficial for the Israelis in particular to once again start lobbing missiles and bombs over into Gaza and start, just as terms of collateral damage, innocent civilians get killed, infrastructure gets destroyed, the people of Gaza, feel as if, oh, here we go again, and then once again turn them against the Israelis. Not that they are suddenly lovers of the Israelis, but their mind shift is just one that is, in all likelihood, believed to be a different mindset now. And again, it's part of that cultural shift that Trump, I believe, is trying to establish, and that is making Hamas the enemy in the eyes of the Gazans. And they are going to do what they can in order to shift it back to the United States and the Israelis. And what better way to do that than to get those missiles to start being lobbed over? Now, this is the difficult decision that has to be made, and I don't envy anyone who has to make it, because you can't at the same time allow Hamas to continue to violate the agreement and not retaliate in some capacity. And so to some degree, you could have somewhat of a lose-lose situation here, where on one hand, you can't allow Hamas to go unchecked. But by checking them, and to what degree you check them, you risk losing the excitement and anticipation of the people of Gaza that perhaps their lifetime of constant battle and fighting and bomb shelters is over. It's not an easy thing. It's a messy thing. And it is much, much, much easier for Hamas to disrupt this peace deal than it is going to be for everyone to keep it together. Now, what Trump has working in his favor and the Israelis have working in their favor is Trump's brilliance in getting all these other countries to sign on to this, to be part of this. Because there are strength in numbers, and that just really, really helps shift the culture and recognition and just overall feeling and narrative, if you will, that Hamas is the real problem here. This isn't a both sides. It's not an Israeli problem. This is because, Israel has constantly signed on to these agreements that Hamas bailed out of and or violated. But if you're an outsider, it's easier to still say both sides, or, well, Israel could do this or do that. But when you are also signed on to it, it becomes a different story. Going to get a traffic update. Pyramid Roofing Company, text line 447 KSGF. I'm Nick Reed. Kristen Bell dragged for unbelievably tone-deaf anniversary post to husband Dax Shepard. Now, I came across this story, and I know it seems like, why is this even worthy to talk about? But I think it is to some degree. And it just made me chuckle. Now, Kristen Bell, you know who Kristen Bell is, right?
Yeah.
You know, she's kind of funny. Now,
I think she's in, what, The Good Place?
Yeah, I don't have any idea.
Yeah, pretty sure she is.
I knew her as Veronica Mars. That was my era in which she played this teenage detective. And I don't really know what she's done since then. But she's married to Dax Shepard, who is also an actor. And they do a lot of sort of goofy stuff together. They're the fun-loving couple. They took a trip to Africa, for example, and they took all of the footage of, them kind of singing and dancing and being goofy and silly together, like the fun romantic couple, the fun rom-com couple, and put it to Toto's Africa. And it was actually, kind of a cute, fun video. And so they're I think Dax even has a podcast, if I remember correctly. She clearly does a lot of things as well still. But they are very interactive on social media and very open about their relationship. And when I say that, I don't know necessarily about the intimate details, but, they're just out there. Probably not unlike a lot of just other people and other couples. They recently had their 12th anniversary. And Kristen Bell, who's 45 now, took to Instagram and had a sweet photo showing her giving the actor a big bear hug while the two sat on their bed. And, she's kind of, she's got a sense of humor, And she posted under the loving photo caption, "Happy 12th wedding anniversary to the man who once said to me, 'I would never kill you.' A lot of men have killed their wives at a certain point. Even though I'm heavily incentivized to kill you, I never would." So she's joking about, what a handful she could be, and that he's kept that promise that, essentially reading between the lines, no matter what a pill she can be, and how worthy of just that he has managed to not do it, and she thanks him for that. Well, as you can imagine, because people are people. The sentiment angered many commenters, several pointing out that October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. One critic urged, "Just an FYI, posting this caption during Domestic Violence Awareness Month is unbelievably tone-deaf. Please reconsider." Another saying that's a wildly sad and insensitive thing to say, considering it's Domestic Violence Awareness Month and thousands of women have died at the hands of the man or the men they trusted. Another, "Kristen, there's no way you posted this during Domestic Violence Awareness Month." And there was a lot of that theme, which part of it just, I don't know, it seems a little odd to me. Like that I understand how some people may see that it's inappropriate or off-putting to post it during Domestic Violence Awareness Month. But I would think if it bothered you that much during that month, would you really be okay with it in November?
Yeah.
Now, if you're going to talk about your husband killing you, just do it one of the other 11 months, and that's perfectly fine. To me, it seems like if it's the sort of thing that is going to be upsetting to you during one, but, on one hand, it's like people get lives. Yes, I completely, totally understand that people do get murdered. People get raped. People get robbed. All sorts of. We joke about things all of the time. All of the time. That might hit home in a negative way to a small segment of the population. Constantly we do these things. Now, some could argue, all right, we'll take it out of the context of the internet. And instead, if you were in a room full of people and you knew, let's say, for example, so I like playing devil's advocate on this stuff. Let's say that one of the people at your let's say you're doing a toast and it's 20 of your best friends and family members, and one of them had lost her sister to murder at the hands of her husband, would you still say that? Now, some people would say, well, probably not, because, read the room. You got somebody in there. And I suppose that is the reality of posting things for the entire world to see, is that you can almost always guarantee that when the room is, every single person on the planet is in the room, there's going to be someone that, if you were talking to that person face to face, or they were right there in the room with you, you probably wouldn't say it. Does that mean you should or shouldn't? People don't have to be on the internet. To me, what solves all of this is the approach I take, and that is you just don't have to put everything on the internet.
That's true.
You just don't have, that's sometimes the simplest solution. You can. You absolutely have every right to. You have every right to upset and offend, to say whatever you want, and to say, listen, if you don't like it, I get it, I understand it, but this is my life. I'm not going to alter and tiptoe my life and the things I say and my sense of humor around every conceivable scenario that might be upsetting to someone. Or you could just be like, you know what? We don't really even need to put this on the internet. That's just different choices. Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed. Ozarks Elder Law, Lori Rook, she's awesome. Ladies in White, you've heard about them, seen them on TV. Of course, many of you knew Lori, first got to know her when she was running for state treasurer as a conservative. But this is where her passion lies. It's what she's been doing for some time now. 10 area locations. Ozarks Elder Law. Now, Medicaid says you can't have any assets if you expect to pay for long-term care nursing home coverage. But if you plan ahead, you can get assets out of your name or in a qualified status so that you don't have to pay out of pocket. And here's a huge one. Do not give stuff away to your kids, because they will catch you and make you pay. That would be the government. Now, listen, there are ways, because of the way the system is set up, that you can legally make sure that you aren't selling off your assets, that you aren't having to do all of these things that you don't want to do. But you have to know how to do it, and you have to know how to do it legally. It's like people who maybe have a number of different sources of income, and they have accountants who are experts when it comes to tax law, and so they're able to find, what they call a loophole over here, a loophole over there. Well, they're not really loopholes. I mean, there's specific things written in legislation that allow taxpayers to not have to pay taxes due to certain conditions. These are conditions that are set up by politicians. And that also applies when it comes to Medicaid and what it will cover, won't cover, and your assets that you do have, you don't have. And there are ways to do it, and there are ways to not do it. That's where Lori Rook and her teams will come into play here and help navigate you through this, because this is what they do. So you want an expert on your side. and just don't do what somebody tells you. Well, this is what we did and it worked for us. Make sure it's done legal. Make sure it's done right. And don't download some $199 thing offline and think that's going to protect you, because it ain't going to work. 10 area locations, and here's the great part. Consultation doesn't cost you a thing. So you think, well, yeah, I'd like to know what I need to do, but I don't want to be spending all this money. That consultation and to learn, here's what you need to do and how much it'll cost, that costs you nothing. OzarksElderLaw.com. Also, Nick's endorsements, KSGF.com. You can find them there. All right, coming up. There's an interesting piece in The Hill. Democrats are increasingly concerned that they are going to continue to not be able to rely on what has long been the reliable support of the Black and Hispanic community. And this is something specifically they're concerned about in New Jersey, as that race for mayor there, which is in a couple of weeks, that election is getting tighter and tighter. And Democrats are very, very concerned about a number of these races that should be absolute easy, traditional Democrat races, but almost within the margin of error, some of them are. And again, they're worried about the minority vote. So some on that, plus more. I'm Nick Reed. Springfield's Talk 104.1. Hello, everyone. I hope you are doing just fantastic. Hour 3 of what is just a really awesomeness here in Springfield. You can text in any thoughts you have, any insults you may want to throw this way, or hilarious jokes, whatever. The Pyramid Roofing Company text line is 417-447-KSGF. If you have the app, it's real easy. You don't even have to remember the number. You just hit the little studio text line button or whatever it is, and it'll bring up all that for you, and then you just put in your message. Also, while you're either on the app or the website, you can get registered for the Teacher's Lounge Pizza Party. This is with Papa John's. This is with Godfather's Pizza, my personal fave. I keep really keeping the fingers crossed that they're going to open one in Republic. But Battlefield's not too far away. It could be worse. And something we actually did this last year, and that was a pizza party for the teacher. Instead of, it's always for the students. And so Godfather's is like, yeah, let's do this. It's going to be awesome. And then it was a real hit. It was a blast. So we're doing it again this year. You don't have to actually be a teacher. You just work in a school. And then if you win, you'll be contacted, and we'll pick a day and just deliver some pizzas over there to your classroom or the teacher's lounge or wherever. And then you can share them if you want. Be the most popular person at the school that day. You can nominate if you have a family member also that is an employee of a school district. It doesn't have to be public either. So go to KSGF.com and find the Godfather's Pizza Teacher's Lounge party thing there and get signed up that way. New Jersey Democrats and prominent state leaders have expressed concern that black and Hispanic voters, historically forming the backbone of the party, may not turn out for Representative Cheryl, Democrat, in her quest to succeed term-limited Governor Phil Murphy, Democrat. Some have chalked up the apathy as lingering from last year's election between former Vice President Harris and Trump, as well as years of failed outreach between the two parties. Others say Cheryl simply isn't doing enough to court their votes. Quote, I believe that although our next generation has to represent the entire state, and we're okay with that, but where do black people land in the conversation? We should be at the top of the food chain, particularly from the Democrat Party side, said Dr. John Harmon, founder and CEO and president of African American Chamber of Commerce, New Jersey. Some of the same concerns around anemic turnout, coupled with Republicans' recent gains within the voter bloc, are resurfacing ahead of the gubernatorial election next month. While New Jersey has typically been thought of as reliably blue, the Democrat Party can't take the Garden State for granted in November. Right now, the spread is 5 percentage points. Democrat 49, Republican 44 for that gubernatorial race in New Jersey. Now, even if Cheryl wins, or Sherrill, Sherrill, if it is by 5 points as opposed to double digits, that is still not a good sign for Democrats. Now, if a Republican wins, that's going to be if the Republican win, I should say, that's going to be a real bad sign. And then you've got Virginia at the same time, those elections going on there. And while, if Democrats win, and they should win all of those, if they win, and even if it's just by half a percentage point, of course, they're going to pretend like, yes, this is a mandate against Donald Trump. This is showing that the American people are rejecting the dictator wannabe and so forth. But make no mistake about it. They're very, very, very concerned. As a party nationally, the Democrats would be very concerned if they do not win by wide margins, particularly in New Jersey. It still has really become laughable to me, though, the way that these political parties, well, Democrats really, in terms of the identity politics, just see these people as these voting blocs, and as if they're all foreigners from one another, and what interests one group it can't possibly interest the other groups. Like, now, what do we do? I mean, we know how it is to try to win the votes of everyone else, but what is it that we do in order to try and win the black vote? The concept of treating them like everyone else never seems to cross their mind. You can only win over people by pitting them against other people for so long. This has long been the bread and butter of the Democrat Party, that is to pit groups against one another. And then to tell each group, well, see, you need me in order to protect you from these people over here. That has become much more difficult for the Democrats with the advent of the internet. Once upon a time, if you were running for office or you were a Democrat senator, I mean, you could easily go tell one group one thing and then go across the street and tell another group the complete opposite. So you could go, for example, to suburban white neighborhood town hall meeting and talk about crime, and yes, I understand, and we need more police officers. Then go across town into the inner city in which you have a black population and do a town hall there and talk about how your number one priority is redistribution of wealth because of white privilege, and you know how racist everyone is and how racist white people are. But prior to the internet and people's ability to film everything and post it on the internet, that was much, much easier for Democrats to do because you could do that. And sure, insiders might know that that's what you were doing, but that was part of the game. But the average person out there that just turned on the nightly news or knew about you because of the local nightly news, they don't know what you're saying to one group versus the other. But now that information becomes so easily accessible. People film you aren't talking to a group without people filming you, and then it gets uploaded, and so people see it. And as that has occurred, many of these different groupings of people that they have long relied on because they have convinced them, oh, all these people are out to get you, and the black population is really almost the pinnacle of all this and their efforts, and that they convince them, you have to have us. We are the ones who will take care of you. Particularly with the embrace of the illegal immigration population, the black population has recognized that, wait a minute, we're not really a priority any longer. We've been taken for granted. We have lockstep voted for them every single time they told us to, over and over again. And what have we gotten for it? Our neighborhoods aren't any better. Our schools aren't any better. And in fact, we find that illegal immigrants are being handed everything under the sun that we should be getting. Meanwhile, you have Donald Trump out there pointing this stuff out and saying, what have you gotten for this? And ultimately treating black Americans just like every other American. And that is, hey, we just want to make everything better. And when everything's better, everybody gets better. And when it comes to specific issues, crime being a big one, Democrats have just flat out taken the position that is the opposite side of where the interest of the inner city black population is. Not just crime, but illegal immigration. So they have actively put themselves on the opposite side of where much of the black population is. And it's the black population that's really following things and paying attention to what's going on that are the ones that are really pushing back and that are gravitating away from Democrats and towards Republicans. Now, of course, Democrats, and I don't know, maybe you're one of them, some Democrats that are listening right now may say, well, that's not true. Well, you're losing them for some reason. Why do you think it is? Why do you think increasingly the Democrats are unable to rely on that once reliable group. Why do you think it is that the Hill has an entire piece on this, and the fact that in New Jersey, lawmakers there are very concerned, not just the black, but the Hispanic community, that they may lose some of these elections because those groups are not coming out as reliably as they did once upon a time. Now, they may not necessarily be going to vote for the Republican, but they're not coming out to vote for Democrats. Why do you think it is? Got to be some reason. Denial isn't going to help change that. I want to play some audio coming up. We're going to get the news, traffic, weather. Charlemagne was on with, what's her name from over at CNN? No, MSNBC. Anyhow, Nicole Wallace. And he essentially was sharing this message with her, and specifically noting that her network just refuses to listen to this reality and what it is that he hears from people in the black community and their concerns regarding the Democrat Party. We've got all that coming up now, the latest news.
And the first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair of the Ozarks Home Improvements. Today we'll see sunny skies with a high near 66. Tonight clear with a low around 40. For your Wednesday, sunny with a high near 71. And taking a look at Thursday, sunny with a high near 70.
Those of you, and this may be in the traffic report, that are, let's see, when did this come in? 7:58, so about 20 minutes ago. The Saddlebrook area on 65, if you are coming up out of Branson or headed, well, no, I don't know if this is northbound. It looks like it may be northbound. You get the huge rock walls there in some of those areas. Well, one in the Saddlebrook area, a vehicle slammed into and is, at the time this picture was taken and sent to us, was in flames. So there may be some traffic issues there if that's not touched on in this traffic report. Charlemagne was on with Nicole Wallace, and there's a discussion about ultimately the refusal of the left and Democrats to just acknowledge and listen to reality. And I mean, this is something that they have cultivated over a period of time. And this is what happens when you cut yourself off from people with different perspectives, is you can't figure out exactly why it is that you're losing support. And this was some of what Nicole Wallace of MSNBC was probing Charlemagne about.
Clearly, the American people didn't care about any of that because the American people were just focused on, the ideas that he was spewing. And it wasn't even just ideas. It was just, stating the obvious and pointing out a lot of things that Democrats may have been ignoring, like the border. Like the economy. He said it himself, man, we won on one word, groceries. And, you can't tout things like Bidenomics when people aren't feeling that in their pockets. You can't just ignore people's criticisms of the border and chalk it up to MAGA messaging. I'll never forget when MSNBC did that to me. And MSNBC did that to me based off me listening to people in New York City, listening to people in Chicago, activists in Chicago, and them telling me what their issues with the border were. And their issues weren't based on any type of prejudice for who was coming across the border. It was literally economic. It was, hey, these people are coming across the border and getting more resources than we are. Like, we've been sitting here in these poor and disenfranchised neighborhoods for years, and we have problems with housing, but they're getting housing. And, we barely can make ends meet, but they're getting, stipends to be able to go out there and get food and things like that. How do you not listen to those people when they're having those conversations? And I remember me repeating exactly what I just said based off the conversations I was having with people actually in the street in these areas. And MSNBC said I was repeating MAGA messaging. I was like, damn, that means that y'all really are not paying attention to y'all constituents.
And that hasn't changed. That has not changed. Their approach still, when you point to reality, is to claim that it's MAGA talking points. What is the narrative that comes from Democrat mayors and governors of states that have massive illegal immigration and crime problems? It's to claim that they don't. That is the narrative of every press conference that is held by a Democrat that has massive crime in their city, to where Donald Trump has said, let's do what we did in Washington, D.C. and clean up the problem using National Guard. They say there is no problem. There's no problem. No, that's just Trump trying to create fear. Those are just talking points from Donald Trump. That's all. They continue to operate in the same manner that is noted here by Charlemagne, and that is when you tell them, listen, here's what's going on. You want to know why it is that you're having some problems with this particular demographic? Here's why. And they just put their hands over there like, no. Nope, those are just talking points. And then when they lose elections, they're like, well, we just got to figure out what happened here. You don't want to know. Because when people tell you, you refuse to listen. Nothing summed up this level of denial and refusal to acknowledge reality, while at the same time pretending to be intellectually curious, then during the election, MSNBC announced that they were going to hire former head of the RNC, Ronna McDowell. I think that was her name. In order to offer up the Republican perspective. That was the whole purpose. as we were in the middle of election season, and you have Democrats on one side and then Republicans on the other. And the entire purpose was so she could say, well, here's what it is that Republicans are, and here's why they say it. And this is their perspective, because they believe that this is what the vote, and so forth. And she never even made it to air, because virtually every single one of those employees pitched a fit saying, we don't want a different perspective. We don't want to hear, because they're all lies. Everything she says is going to be a lie. Everything Donald Trump says is a lie, and so we're not going to even take, nope, won't even listen. They're all just MAGA talking points. Some of them went on air declaring that they wouldn't even allow her on their show, and so MSNBC fired her. And then these same people will sit there while talking about how it is, voters vote for Trump, and they're just like, oh, we just don't understand. I mean, they openly acknowledge that they don't understand how anyone could do this or anyone could do that. Well, you had someone hired in order to explain that to you, but you did not want to hear it. The Democrat Party has become intellectually and emotionally a party of toddlers that do not want to hear anything other than what makes them happy and feels good and validates their beliefs, even if it is damaging to their cause and their effort. And it's in what's amazing about an interview like the one Nicole Wallace had with Charlemagne, in which Charlemagne, he's not the first one to say this as a Democrat. There have been a number of Democrats who have acknowledged they've been accused of being a mouthpiece for Trump or spreading MAGA talking points, because they're simply saying, hey, this is what I'm hearing from the voters. This is what they're saying. Even when Democrats are told, look, here's the problem, that they also refuse to listen to. It's an amazing thing to watch play out. And it really is part of the reason that it's curious / very concerned about how it is Democrats are, to what lengths they will go in order to get back and to retain power, because they've given up on results. They've clearly given up on that. They, even at times in the lead up to the election, encouraged people that they shouldn't worry about inflation because Donald Trump is going to put you in concentration camps. So you think you're worried about inflation, just wait till Donald Trump gets in there and you'll wish you had inflation back. They have given up on arguing that their policies are better. And instead it's all about we're good, they're evil, that's why you vote for us, no questions asked. That increasingly is not working. So what are they going to do next? I mean, violence, they're promoting violence, supporting violence, celebrating violence, up to and including assassinations, some unsuccessful, some successful. And that doesn't seem to be moving the needle. What will they do next? What route, what path are they going to take? And these interviews, like the one I just played, the audio of Charlemagne with Nicole Wallace, is showing that they still don't have an interest in just even resetting. And we're like, okay, let's just reset here. What were we doing when we were legitimately winning? Let's go back to the 90s, for example, when we didn't have to rig elections to the degree we do, when we didn't have to tell Democrat voters, no, here's who you're going to support, where we just were kind of operating and we were selling ideas. We'd win some, we'd lose some, but that's the name of the game. They're unwilling to do that. And part of the reason is because they don't believe they should not be in power. They no longer believe that we should have a two-party system or even options other than personalities. So you can have a choice of, two people from which you choose, but they both have to be left-wingers. Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed.
Springfield's Talk 104.1, the first alert forecast from Ozarks First, meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by J&S Automotive. Today we'll see sunny skies with a high near 66. Tonight clear with a low around 40. For your Wednesday, sunny with a high near 71. And taking a look at Thursday, sunny with a high near 70. And Melissa wrote this about Foreman Mechanical Heating and Air. Our heater went out the night before and they were out first thing in the morning when I called. They found a quick quick solution and will follow up with me for annual services. Great company to work with, 5 stars. And that's the great thing about Foreman Mechanical. They are quick, efficient, and they even offer a 24/7 emergency service line in case an issue does pop up after those normal business hours. So whether you need a fall preventative maintenance check, a service repair, a new unit install, or indoor air quality testing to help you with those allergies, the Foreman team, they can help you out with all of your HVAC needs. If it is time to have the Foreman team out to your home, reach out to Russell today and schedule that appointment, especially if it's time for that preventative maintenance check. Those cleanings and inspections, they can really help keep your unit running smoothly when you need it the most. Now, you can schedule that appointment at foremanmechanical.com, or you can find all of their contact information under the Sarah's Endorsements tab at ksgf.com.
Trump has been very proactive looking down the road long term, well before he will still be on this planet as a living human being, regarding the importance of rare earth minerals and the recognition that this is China has been for a very long time now been gathering up or placing their marker in areas of the world. Of course, they have their own, but Africa is another big area in which they can they can have access to those resources. And we've been way behind the curve. Trump recognizes this, and so this is part of what he has been trying to do, is to create these agreements in which the United States can try and catch up to China when it comes to the acquisition of these rare earth minerals. The latest being in an agreement signed with the Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese yesterday in the White House. Trump and Albanese signed the agreement at the start of their meeting yesterday, with the president telling reporters that it had been negotiated over a period of 4 or 5 months, saying we got it done just in time for the visit. Saying we worked together very much on rare earths, critical minerals, and lots of other things. We've had a very good relationship. We've been working on that for quite a while. Albanese said that Australia has an $8.5 billion pipeline, quote, ready to go for the deal. And so then there was some discussion about, tariffs and how that would be affected and impacted. And so, this is another, in the name of national security, a step long term. And this is an area that Trump excels and that we are perhaps not today. I mean, we do, but we're really, really going to get the benefit well down the road. Trump understands the importance of taking steps today that may not necessarily come to fruition for another 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the road, but knows how important that's going to be. You got to plant the seeds now for those crops to grow, down the road. It is an interesting juxtaposition to the general Washington, D.C. way of doing things, and that is kick the can down the road so that it is someone else's problem. These are problems that Trump could never even worry about addressing, and no one would even know. It's not as if there is some huge clamoring for us to try and catch up with China so that we don't find ourselves so far behind when it comes to rare mineral acquisitions one day that China has yet another form of control over us. I mean, Trump is the one who just sees that. He recognizes it. It was part of the reason that he started the ball rolling on increasing security when it came to Greenland, and that was because of China. And China getting those rare minerals, having those relationships that Greenland had set up with China, and Trump recognized the danger of this. And not only is it something, again, that we as a country is laying the groundwork to benefit us way down the road, it's not only something that isn't necessarily seen or recognized by other people who have the power to do something, but he gets mocked for it. And down the road, when we potentially find ourselves not at a disadvantage that alternate timeline if Trump hadn't gotten elected president, and none of this stuff is being addressed and looked at from a national security standpoint, and that gives China this massive advantage to us. Unfortunately, in terms of history, we don't really have the alternate timeline thing that we can look at and say, oh, 30 years from now or 40 years from now. That's the difference. Thank goodness Trump did that 40 years ago. This is the thing about Trump that is so difficult for people to often, particularly Trump haters, to wrap their minds around. That while, yes, Trump does, certainly, without question, make sure that people know when he has a success. He certainly doesn't have a problem taking credit for his successes. But what you can't say about Donald Trump is that he's only concerned with doing things that is going to give him some sort of fanfare or credit, because much of the very meaningful things that he is doing now are to benefit us way in the future, that when they do come to benefit us long term, he will never get credit for. And he knows that, but that's not why he's doing it. There was also a humorous exchange in the White House between Donald Trump, the Prime Minister of Australia, and the Australian ambassador to the U.S. And so I'm going to play this audio, but it's necessary to give you just a little bit of background here. Apparently, a few years ago, the now Australian ambassador had posted a number of things about Donald Trump that were very insulting. I know this is a huge surprise. And that ambassador he said the things before he became an ambassador. He is now an ambassador. And so Trump is sitting there at the table with the Prime Minister of Australia, and there's, of course, it's one of these huge tables with all sorts of people around it, and a reporter asks him about the ambassador and these past comments. Now, the ambassador is sitting there across the table from Trump when this question is asked, and this is how it all played out. It starts with the reporter asking about the ambassador's comments.
You said an ambassador. Don't tell. Is he still working? You said that before I put this position. I don't like you either. And probably never will. Go ahead.
Yeah. The visuals of it are even more humorous because the prime minister is sitting next to him, and Trump's like, is he still an ambassador? And the prime minister goes, yeah. And he kind of nods his head right across the table. And that's where the guy is. And he's starting to say, well, I said those things before I was ambassador. And Trump's like, I don't like you either. And just kind of dismissively says it in a humorous fashion. There's so many of those interactions that you see, and you can just tell that Trump feels so much more in control of the things that are occurring during this administration than during his previous administration. And I think that in the end, he will tell us all it was the people he surrounded himself with, along with the acquired knowledge, of course, of just how depraved and straight up evil so many people in Washington, D.C. can be. And of course, a lot of that knowledge is what helped him pick better people, I'd say. And I suspect he will as well. But I want to say that he was asked during an interview what his biggest mistake was during his first term. And I want to say, or no, what he learned most. And it was something along the lines of picking the people that he picks to surround himself with. And this is one of Trump's great strengths, is recognizing when you do something that doesn't work, do it differently. Springfield's Talk 104.1. I'm Nick Reed. there were, over the weekend, this past weekend, of course, these No Kings events, and on display you saw a lot of just straight up immaturity, just craziness. A lot of the displays were the sort of thing that one might think they would see at some local offbeat theater in which you have artists that write their own plays and they just make them as weird as possible. Just bizarre things. But then there were calls to assassinate Trump and to murder political opposition, more of the sort of standard behavior we're seeing out of the party of violence. And one of the videos that was circulating was of a woman who looked about as healthy as most liberal women do, and she did a finger gun thing to her neck, bang, bang, mocking the assassination of Charlie Kirk. And this should come as no surprise. Apparently, this is an elementary school teacher out of the Chicago area. How shocking. Earlier in the program, played audio of Karine Jean-Pierre, former White House spokesperson, on her book tour, in which she was arguing the problem with the Republican Party. And though she's an independent but could still never vote for Republicans, is because that is the party that just has no humanity, as opposed to the Democrat Party that continues to celebrate murder of political opposition. A party in which 60+% of young Democrats support political violence if it means getting their way. And when you, at the young age of 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, have teachers that are so undisciplined and feel it is so appropriate and virtuous to murder political opposition that they openly symbolize it, that this is how you get where we are. During the Tea Party events, you could have 1,000 people, and sometimes you'd have a guy, usually a guy who's of retirement age, that would dress as Paul Revere. And the media would always find that one person because in their minds it was a way to demonstrate to the American people how nutty Tea Party conservatives were. I mean, look at them. They dress up. They go on and on about the founding. And they would always find the person that they thought was the weirdest oddball possible. Meanwhile, you have at these No Kings events, there's just numerous instances of calls of violence, of, mocking violence, calls to assassinate Trump, and somehow that never gets any coverage whatsoever. Well, because, see, those just a few oddballs. I mean, that wouldn't be fair, because if you cover that, it might misinform people about the overall culture of the event, right? You don't want to make people erroneously believe that that is a representation of everyone involved, of course. The New York Post editorial board is calling for Curtis Sliwa to quit the mayoral race to stop Mamdani. Now, New York race, you've got 3 candidates in there. You've got Mamdani, the anti-Semitic global jihadist, who is leading the pack because New York City apparently is filled with people on a suicide mission. You have Andrew Cuomo, who took COVID-infected patients and jammed them into nursing homes, exposing the most vulnerable people health-wise on the planet to COVID, which, of course, meant, I think the number was in the thousands of people died unnecessarily because of this. So the Democrats have 2 incredible options there. Then you have Sliwa, who, he's the Republican. He's been around there for a long while. He's been an activist, and he's well known. He's a radio host. He may still be. I don't know. But he can't get above like 16%. And so what is occurring here is the polling shows that if he drops out, Andrew Cuomo will be within striking distance of Mamdani. And so this is why the New York Post is calling on Sliwa to drop out, so that as bad as Cuomo is, and as many people needlessly lost their lives, which, by the way, those moves were all for money. You get those COVID patients out of hospitals and cram them into nursing homes with the elderly. That meant more COVID patients could get in the hospital, which meant more federal dollars. So he was killing elderly people off for money. And I think this is just is such a horrifically sad reflection of what has become of New York City. That people are frantically trying to strategically have people drop out, which, of course, Mayor Adams already dropped out. Sliwa is the next one that's, they're trying to get drop out, in order to make sure the guy who, the best choice, like the best choice to save New York from the global jihadist anti-Semite is a guy who, for cash, killed off thousands of elderly people. That is what New York City has become. What once upon a time was considered the greatest city in the world. What an absolute vile and disgusting shame. And there are a lot of people who are, and I get the sentiment. I don't know where I fall on it intellectually. I don't know where I fall on it emotionally, but I understand the sentiment of saying just let them burn the place to the ground. Just let them do it. Quit trying to save people who don't want to save themselves. It's like having a family member that is a total junkie, and you try and try and try and try, and at some point you realize I can't do anything else. Until they want to help themselves, there's no helping them. You cannot force self-destructive people to discontinue being self-destructive. And I think that there are a lot of people that are viewing New York City that way. And, Chicago, Baltimore, a lot of these Democrat-run cities. So they're even torn when it comes to Trump going in and trying to save these people from themselves. On one hand, it does show what works, and it shows the success of Donald Trump. But on the other, why try to help people who are insistent on continuing to destroy themselves? Emily Johnson, House Theory Realty. Doug had the following to say: we highly recommend Emily Johnson. On our own, we found a home we wanted to purchase, which is a slightly different scenario. Later, we realized what a small piece of the buying experience finding the house is. The seller was very emotionally attached to the house we were trying to purchase. This person was having a hard time with the negotiation process related to the request after the home inspection. The seller's realtor was also struggling to encourage her client to make decisions timely. That's where Emily really stepped up. She not only helped us, but she also helped advise the other realtor on how to help her client. I'm not sure the sale would have ever have been finalized without Emily's assistance. And that is just, virtually every review that I share with you, I think is a perfect snapshot of what you get with Emily Johnson. And that is yet another one. Home buying, home selling. She's just a good person that is really, really good at what she does. And that's a great comment. Sometimes you get really good people, but because they're good, and so they aren't necessarily the best at their job. Sometimes people are great at their job, but they're cutthroat and they're not good people. Every so often you get the unicorn. and that is the best of all worlds, and that's what you get with Emily Johnson, House Theory Realty. The Republican of the New York race was the founder of the Guardian Angels in the 70s, 80s. Yes, that's what Sliwa, the Guardian Angels, which was a I don't know that they would call themselves, or anybody would call them vigilante, but they were sort of citizen patrols in order to try and have a presence that would combat crime in New York City. And so he definitely has a great deal of name recognition, which when you combine that with the anemic support numbers he has, I mean, it is New York City, 9-1 Democrats. You can only expect so much.